muscles and motion disintegrating as it goes. Testing our communication. Light fuel the fire that has burned the holes in me. So then I'll seek to reach.
Well, I hope everybody's having a good day. Hope everyone has had a good week. It is Friday, isn't it? This is probably going to be much shorter than I want it to be. Probably not going to convey what I wanted to convey. But this is a important subject to me, I guess. Every time there's a mass shooting, specifically a school shooting, really it's limited to those, or if anyone high profile is shot or shot at, before the body's cool, progressives, leftists, anyone who is a gun control advocate seizes upon the tragedy and proceeds to stand upon the dead bodies like they're a platform or a stage to show why their position is correct. Just look at this dead body I'm standing upon. And it makes me really, really angry every single time. Like, really angry. Really in a way that I can't explain. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about my experience with gun violence. On the night of June 29th, 2008, me and my sister, Tiffany Toole, great girl, we were sitting in a small dining room of her friend's house, new guy friend, whatever he was. He was a nobody to me then. He's a nobody to me now, even more so. He was a prop almost. We just sat, listening to music, smoking some weed, drank some beers, took some shots, and talked. We talked like two close siblings who didn't think that we had limited time with one another. There are two things that stand out about that night specifically to me. The guy, I'm guessing in some weird attempt to impress me or make me like him or approve of him, whatever, decided he was going to show off two firearms that he had. A 25 caliber pistol and a 40 caliber pistol. The manufacturers escaped me at this particular time, but I can remember how they look clear as day. I'm pretty sure the 40 was a Ruger. The 25, I think, may have been a Taurus. It's neither here nor there. The second thing that stood out to me and stands out to me to this day, Tiffany kept talking about how she wanted to change her life, how she wanted nothing more than to settle down and have a family, as opposed to the very unsteady, unmoored, wanderlust-full life that she had lived to this point. And it was a change in focus that I'd never seen from her, really that drastically from anyone. I ended up crashing there that night, the night of the 29th. And the next day, as I was getting ready to leave, wanted to go brush my teeth and wash my behind, she insisted I come back and hang out that night, the night of June 30th. She said she was worried about me. She knew I'd been going through a few personal things at the time. And she just wanted me to come back and hang out with her. I said, okay, big head, I'll be back tonight. We'll do it again. There was no urgency, though. There was no real reason for me to see that as a priority. So I ended up doing something else. I blew her off without so much as a, how you doing, fuck you, whatever. And I decided to go do something else. I mean, after all, in my mind, she'd understand. Technology then in mid 2008 and social media weren't what it is now, So you can guess that I wasn't in contact, constantly with people, and they couldn't constantly be in contact with me should anything happen. Back then, emergencies had to be handled a little different. You couldn't contact everybody and give them a heads up all at once, right away, instantaneously. One of the first things I remembered about the next morning when I got up, having had a good night, besides the fact that I wasn't hungover, and I should have been, is that it was a perfect Indiana summer day. It was July 1st, cloudless sky, warm, a little bit of a breeze before the sun really cranked up and the humidity set in. Didn't know anything was amiss. I decided I was going to head over to Tiffany and Brandy's. And Brandy was just a friend of ours. Tiffany lived with her, was kind of a live-in babysitter. I was just going to go over there and hang out, try to explain to Tiffany what happened. I knew she wouldn't mind or anything, but that was my first priority that morning. There's a liquor store adjacent to their house. I stopped there and got me 2 Heinekens. It's the big 22-ounce ones. And as I'm leaving the liquor store, I'm heading over to Brandy's and Tiffany's, and I notice a crowd there, which is kind of unusual. Now, nobody necessarily disliked Brandy, but people didn't really hang out at her house like that. Seeing a huge crowd there was kind of odd, And when I walk up, I think maybe it's a good time going on, a good time happening. I got 2 beers, and, I'm like, hey, everybody, how's it going? Blah, blah, blah. Let's get it in. And everybody looks at me like I'm completely retarded. And Alex, everybody calls him Wax or AWAX, looks really distraught and looks up at me and says, he doesn't know. Immediately my demeanor changed, and I said, what do you mean? I don't know what. And then another person we all knew, a person who was very close to my sister, grabs me in a bear hug. And this is not a small guy. And grabs me in a very, very tight bear hug. And tells me, mouth pretty much on my ear, Tiffany got shot. And I immediately, become enraged and react to that. My first thought is, let's get to the hospital. I got to see my fucking sister. We're going to find out who did this. I got to see her. Let's go. What hospital is she at? And Looney never let go of the bear hug. And like I said, he's a big guy, pretty big guy, and I'm not a big guy by any stretch of the imagination. He'd never let go. And his next words fucks me up in a way no one can understand. He says she didn't make it. She didn't make it. The next couple days are a blur, I'm not going to get into a lot of things that happened because they're really irrelevant. But just imagine, your only real close relative brutally murdered at the age of 25. And the police aren't doing anything about it, really. There are threats on her funeral, which we're not prepared for. It's just a mess. It's kind of a blur the next few days. Went through the stages of grief, as you can imagine. But one thing that was hard to deal with is the fact that no one was prepared to bury a 25-year-old in good health. There was no money put back for a funeral. There was no family plots. There was no nothing. No life insurance. None of that. My mother, who was now facing the death and having to bury her firstborn child was completely wrecked. Me and my brothers were, in our own way, all lost and angry and wanting to lash out. That's about all I can say. We wanted to lash out. Friends, they were all angry and sad and varying degrees of helpful. It was just crazy. Never once during all that do I remember anybody even suggesting that the gun was the problem or the gun was the blame. To be honest, to have done so, especially when it was fresh, would probably have resulted in violence, immediate violence, and it is what it is. Because a gun didn't kill my sister. She was killed by a human being. A human being did it. A human being, for whatever reason, felt like they didn't even set out to kill her. They wanted to kill the cocksucker that she was dating. And he lived. He lived because he tried to run out the door when the shooting started and took one bullet in the back. She was shot and killed. But the gun didn't kill her. The gun had no malice. The gun had no intention or no forethought, no motive. It was just a tool in someone's hand. A person who thought that violence was the best solution to their whatever problem they had. And my sister was caught in the crossfire. She meant a great deal to me, growing up, it was me and her. We was super close, me and Tiffany. That's how I met all my friends. She taught me more than I can ever tell anybody. She taught me, about variety in music, about what good music was. She was always demanding that I be a man. Always. She never let me off the hook. But she was loyal to a fault. She was on my side and on my brother's side, regardless of who was wrong. It didn't matter, we're family, and that's all that mattered. She was going to be on our side. Same with her friends. She was going to back her friends to the gates of hell if need be. She was rough. She was rough, tough girl. But that wasn't the entirety of who she was either, because she was also the most loving person. You couldn't see or know a better person around children. And kids loved her. All kids who came around her loved her. Aunt Tiff, My life would have been unbearable without her. All the hardships that I went through as a child, she shared with me. She did her part to try to make them better. And I feel she pulled me through it. Her life was rich. It was a rich life. It was a life well lived, I guess, if you could say that about a 25-year-old. It's full of heartache, full of happiness, joy, full of anger, love, adventure. Very little regret. Very little regret in her life, and the regret she did carry was for not living fuller and not having more direction. She's not a gunshot victim. That is not the sum of who she was. She is not a statistic. And she's most definitely not a talking point. She's not a platform for someone to use to push a political agenda. Now, I understand the circumstances are different than a school shooting or whatever, but it's still a gun violence. It's still a gun death. And her life is more than the manner in which it ended. And I would have lost my mind if she would have been reduced to that by anybody. those in the media and those in social media who advocate for certain political positions need to realize that the person shot is not the only victim when things like this occur. And they need to realize, too, that a chunk of metal did not alter my life in this way. You need to step back and think about those left behind, and think about what you're doing to the memory of their loved one, or doing to the name of their loved one. By using their name in this manner. I would have lost my mind, and it's quite possible that there would be some more gun victims had someone attempted to do this with my sister. And see, there's the added problem or issue with me is police have never interviewed a suspect, never brought in a suspect, never told the family that there was even a suspect in mind, although, you know, the neighborhood south side of Indianapolis is like a small town. Everybody knows everybody. We could tell you who it was, probably. But there's no closure. So, think about the people left behind, and think about the lives these people lived before you cheapen it, and before you reduce them to the manner in which they died. Have a heart. Be human. Use decency in class in situations like this. And don't divide the people in this country with it. Don't use it to divide people. It's a person who's lost their life. It's mothers who have lost their children. Children who have lost their mothers sometimes. It's fathers losing children, children losing fathers, brothers losing sisters, sisters losing brothers, friends losing friends. It's an American life lost. And you're a disgusting human being if you use it or portray it as anything other than that. Now, this is not the easiest thing for me, so I'm going to go ahead and hop off here. I hope the right person hears this, that it could make a difference in how they approach things. I hope it will wake people up to where the real gun violence lies in this country, because it's not in the schoolhouse, it's on the streets. It's in the streets of our cities. And the violence lies in the hearts of our youth. We got to make life matter again. We got to make life have value again, or this is going to continue to happen. I know something. Tiffany's life mattered just as much as anyone else's. All the young people that were shot in Chicago this week, their lives mattered just as anyone else's. All the young people shot in my city, Indianapolis, their lives mattered. St. Louis, Detroit, Baltimore, all these people's lives matter. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the people behind the violence. And let's talk about the real cause. Let's remember that you have loved ones. And let's think about how you would feel if they lost their life. Hope you enjoy the rest of your evening with this morose little bit I gave you. And we'll shoot for something a little more positive later in the week. But until then, I'm going to attack. I'm going to attack viscerally people who stand upon the still warm bodies of children to advance a political agenda. Good night.